welcome you formally to the very first lecture. And feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast. And feel free to ask questions at any time. For postgraduate studies like this, it is quite different from the undergraduate studies. In some universities, like mine, it is done through seminars. So you make seminar presentations and so on. The presumption is that you've done your first degree, you are doing the master's, probably you go on to do the PhD, and you can research and you can write academic papers and you can present them. So feel free to stop me and ask any questions, and I would encourage the active method so that you can also get involved and so on. That's the first thing. But let me introduce myself again, since my friend didn't introduce me. Oh, yesterday I was introduced. I'm Kojo in Ghana, where I come from, among the Ashantis, we are named after the days we are born. So if you are a male born on Monday, you are Kojo. So that shows I was born on a Monday. Kwame Nkrumah, you've heard of Kwame Nkrumah? Kwame is a male born on Saturday. Later, if you tell me the days you were born, I will tell you your Ghanaian names. I am with the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana. And you can contact me if you wish. KOAU University of Ghana, GH. I also have KOAIDOO at University of Ghana, UG.edu.gh for Ghana. Those of you who are on Facebook, my name on Facebook is Kojo Obokwe. But I also have a Yahoo address, edu77us@yahoo.com. edu77us@yahoo.com.
Just say edu, that's all.
No, that's not that. Okay. Edu. That's my Yahoo account. So if you write to any of them, you'll get me. And if you want to be my friend on Facebook, Kojo Obokwe.
Yes.
Yes, edu77us.
Yes.
All as one word. There's no space. So I think that is all you need to know about me for now. I will get to know you as time goes on. I'm told you come from different backgrounds. Some of you read economics, some read political science, business, and so on and so forth. Now, let me say a word about the assessment. I'm told, and I don't know if he told you, that you are not going to have a written examination. That's what they told me. I don't know if that is the case. Are you aware of that? There will be no written. But then there will be a term paper. So at the end of our meeting, within a month, I'll give you the topics to choose from. You present papers. Maximum, he told me, of 10 pages, between 5 and 10 pages. Well researched and well written, with a biography. I'm sure you know of plagiarism. It's a very serious offense in my university. If you plagiarize, you would be dismissed. So I want to warn you, I'll be very careful with plagiarism. And then, if your paper is not passable, if you don't pass the paper, you have one more chance to resubmit. You are aware of all these. So if you present the paper and it is failed, you have one more chance to represent. So that is by way of introduction as to what you should expect. Now, if there are no questions, let's theories of original integration. One of the things my students back in Ghana don't like is theory, because sometimes theory is heavy and it calls for a certain level of abstraction and thinking. First of all, we should understand that regional integration has become so popular after the World War II because of three things. First, nations are concerned about stability and security. Two, nations are concerned about wealth creation and prosperity. And three, nations are concerned about peace. So it is these imperatives, these important factors of stability, peace, and prosperity that are driving nations to enter into integration, regional integration. And we have many countries, both in Africa, Asia, also, not just in Europe, that have tried since the war to integrate their economies. Now, the next thing to understand is that integration itself is hierarchical. It's in stages. Nations may start integration sometimes through simple things like common trade agreements or a common market or the removal of tariffs. And as it progresses, finally, they may enter into political integration. And this is why I say that it is a hierarchical stage of union by nations that freely enter into agreements to unite. Now, regional integration is a broad landscape. And within that broad landscape, there are many different narratives. And I want us to look at those narratives, those theories of integration. And to do that, I want us to look at Europe. And we are looking at Europe because that is where we have a classical example of integration which is almost successful, the European Union. So let's look at that. And then we'll be looking at how people have tried to theorize about the processes of integration which started in Europe, and then later we'll come back to Africa. Actually, European integration started, according to most writers, around 1951, when the coal and steel agreements were signed between Germany, France, and some Netherlands, and so on. Now, at this point, the thinking in Europe was that if agreements in this sector of the economy, coal and steel, became successful, it would spill over. There would be a spillover to other sectors of the economy. And that was important. And there was this German-American political scientist, and he was of the view that once a sector of the economies of Europe started cooperating, there would be incentivized, that itself will provide the incentives for a spillover, for people to also begin to cooperate in the other sectors. And this is the beginning of what came to be known as the neo-functional theory of European integration. So the neo-functional theory is simply about the cooperation and the possibilities of spillover when one sector of the economy begin to work together. And so Hart and another political scientist called Lindbergh popularized this idea of neo-functionalism as a theory of European. And one of the, I have some documents where I forgot to. I have these and I'll send some of them to the professor. So he's going to keep them in a place where you can go and do photocopies for yourselves. He will send the rest to you. And at least for a postgraduate study, I expect you to read between 50 and 70 pages a week. That is the normal thing, so that you engage extensively with the literature. So I'll give this one to you, and he will send the rest to you later. Now, the neo-functional theory, which had emerged to try to explain the initial attempt at integration in Europe, faced a problem, because by 1958, this incipient beginning European cooperation suffered a crisis when France, under de Gaulle, decided that they were not going to allow majority decisions to be taken, and that every country or any country in Europe that had a certain national interest which ran counter to the majority decision could express it. So at this point in 1958, there was a crisis of neo-functionalism. Hans and Lindbergh had theorized that as sectors of the various economies cooperated, there will be a spillover. Then it comes all of a sudden this challenge from France, from de Gaulle in 1958, by which de Gaulle was saying that nation states in Europe should have the right to kick against majority decisions if it was in their national interest. And so there was a shift, there was a revision, a shift, and there appeared a second interesting theory of European integration. The theory was liberal governmentalism. What it meant was that it was liberal in that it recognized diversity, the logic of diversity, and it also recognized the need for interstate negotiations. So, regional integration wasn't going to just happen because it has started and then later it was spilled over. Because of what France was saying, there was this new theory of liberal governmentalism that emerged, which tried to say two things. One, there should be the recognition of diversity of national interests, which should be taken into consideration. Because France was simply saying that if the majority decides, it doesn't mean we should all go along. We as France, or let's say Holland, or let's say Germany, may have some reservations based on national interest, and that national interest should be taken into account, and it should be possible for them to allow interstate negotiations. So states should be able to negotiate their way within the region. It is not simply going to be a case where the majority decides. And so liberal governmentalism arose as a critique or as a result of the failure of neo-functionalism. Now later emerged the theory of institutionalism. The institutionalist approach. And the institutionalists were simply saying that it is not sufficient, it is not enough for governments simply to negotiate without European institutions doing nothing. And that if the European institutions were simply there to implement decisions made by government, then what was the need? And therefore, the institutional approach was itself a critique of the liberal governmentalist approach, that institutions were important. And in fact, the idea of institutionalism goes back to one American. Have you heard of the name Karl Popper? Karl Popper was an American political scientist, and he wrote an interesting book, Open Society and Its Enemies. And he is said to be the one who